Here on Kiwi.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Well, as most people will be well aware now, John Key had his State of the Nation speech a little bit earlier on this week and announced some of the plans if they get re-elected, the national government gets re-elected. The plans involve selling off state assets, or partial selling off state assets, in particular some of the power generation assets, and also a little bit of Air New Zealand as well. A lot of commentary about this, of course, but it's hard to find commentary that really just examines the facts and really just looks at the numbers and says, well, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, this makes sense. Keith Ng was one of the chaps who came up with a column yesterday at publicaddress.net. Well worth going along and having a read, but he is joining us this morning to talk about it. Good morning to you, Keith.
Good morning, Wammo.
And you looked at the issue from two angles about... First of all, what John Key was actually saying and the reasons why we need to sell assets, and then also the actual sense of selling assets. So I suppose I'll leave it up to you which one you want to tackle first.
Well, let's look at the problem first, right? The problem that we had was Standard & Poor's, the credit agency, telling us that, hey, our economy is in pretty bad shape. And the reason why our economy is in pretty bad shape is that we've got quite a lot of debt, and that's private debt. That's debt that people own, not the government. And that debt is causing us to constantly send money overseas to pay off the interest.
And it's the sort of debt that people rack up on credit cards, their houses, that kind of thing?
Yeah, but what we're talking about here is net debt, so we're counting everything.
Okay.
So that's the first part of the problem, right? The second part of the problem is that the government is on having some fiscal problems because of the aging population. We don't have any immediate problems, but we're on a path that's pretty bad because people are getting older, health costs are going up, superannuation costs are going up. So these are things that we're going to have to worry about in sort of 5-10 years' time.
Okay.
So these are the two problems. And what I get really upset with is the fact that, well, asset sale doesn't do anything about that. What asset sale does, it doesn't make us any richer. Standard & Poor's was saying that the government needs to start saving more and starting to reduce debt and that sort of thing. And Bill English has come out and said, look, we need to spend less and save more, which are very sensible things. But when you sell an asset, you actually lose the income from the asset as well. So you don't actually become any richer, you just get cash.
But I feel rich immediately, though, once the sale's gone through, though, don't I? I mean, suddenly my bank account is inflated, I've got all this money here, and I can go spend it on other things.
Sure, like if you sell something that you're not really using anyway, but what we're talking about here is a productive asset. These state-owned enterprises actually earn quite a lot of money. Bernard Hickey had a look at this yesterday, and he found that these companies together had an average yield of 7.6%. So each year, these companies were generating 7.6% of their value, whereas on debt, so that if we sold them and used them to pay off debt, we were only paying 5.5% on of interest on that debt.
Okay, so we're actually earning more in payments from the assets currently and we're paying less kind of interest on our debt. That's what you're saying?
So the bottom line is that they're actually quite a good deal, and that you need some pretty strong reason, some pretty strong other reason that's not just pure money, to actually justify selling them. Now, look, it's possible that there are reasons about prudent debt, and I think the one that John Key's really aiming for is this idea that they would somehow become more efficient once we sell them.
Which is something we always hear about. We always hear about the public service being inefficient, private being efficient.
Exactly. So whether they can actually prove that case, we'll find out when Treasury gets back to us. But that hasn't actually been done yet, so a case hasn't actually been made.
Yeah, okay. So is it as simple as... So can the argument be distilled down to this this percentage, this yield that we get, the 7.6% on the assets currently versus the 5.5% interest the government is now paying on new debt?
That's the bottom line. That's the price of this move.
Right.
And what we're really looking at is, okay, what do we actually get out of this? What do we actually, the reasons we want to reduce debt, that's not the net worth, but just debt. Why do we really want to do it? And is it worth spending money on?
John Key is saying, though, that we want to buy more assets as a government into the future, so we need to sell these assets now so that we can buy more in the future, like hospitals and schools.
Well, that's a really arbitrary thing to say, because every time you're making an asset purchase decision, what you're doing is going, okay, how much is this new thing worth to me? Is this actually a good deal? And then what you're comparing it with should be, okay, if I had to borrow money at 5.5% to do it, is this worth it? It's really arbitrary to go, okay, I'm going to think about whether I buy this or not, and there's just going to be no debt whatsoever. I'm going to have to fund it from selling other assets. There's no reason why you'd want to do this when it is more expensive to sell an asset than it is to just take up debt.
Yeah. Okay, in saying all that, though, and this is a much, I guess, larger question, and it's one that all politicians right across the spectrum will be looking to tackle, is the problem that you outlined at the beginning of this conversation about this ageing population. How do we pay for these people who are not going to be working anymore, and this massive private debt that New Zealand has? How is that going to be solved?
Well, private debt is the really tricky one here, that the government, there's really only very limited things the government can do to try to get people to save more. And most of the things that it does, supposedly GST had a little bit of effect in that area. And things like KiwiSaver would try to get people to save more as well. But it's something that the government doesn't have a lot of direct control over. It's something that we have to do.
Yeah, okay.
But the flip side is this aging population problem. That is something that the government is in a position to do. In particular, superannuation. It's one of the things that we really screwed up in the last election. That once John Key decided to kind of stick his neck out and go, all right, I'm not going to be cutting superannuation entitlement or raising superannuation age, we really had a very serious problem, because that is a massive part of the bill. And if we don't go about changing that, then there's really not much room for us to move. What the government has done so far, the thing that was snuck into the speech that nobody seems to have noticed, is to do this thing called reduce the operating allowance. And what that does is it's basically saying, all right, next year, instead of spending $800 million more, we're going to be spending $600 more, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. Yeah. And the cumulative effect of that is, in 10 years' time, that actually amounts to a $1 or $2 billion cut to the budget. And because that sort of stuff racks up, it's actually it's almost like a falling lid, a sinking lid.
Yeah.
And the problem with that sinking lid is you still have things that aren't sinking with it. You have things like superannuation, things like health costs that can't actually be squeezed down. So when that lid is sinking and you've got these other bits that won't move, that means the sinking lid has to squeeze out of other things, out of education, out of our ability to actually spend on pretty much anything.
So it's not going to be an easy one to get through, and it's a pretty hard one, I guess, for the New Zealand public to digest. And I guess a lot is going to be talked about this over the next 6, 7, 8 months before the election.
Well, one thing I do want to add to that is that because it's a sinking lid, the saving has to come in the future. So what the government is actually doing is saying, oh, future governments are going to make those savings, but nothing is being done right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem probably of the election cycle, wouldn't you agree, Keith, that the election cycle is so small that people only think in 3-year terms rather than far into the future?
Well, yeah, and the fact that they're doing this, it is easy for them to go, well, we've just cut $40 billion out of the budget in 2030, and we've basically fixed our deficit problem. When in fact they've just drawn a chalk line, and future governments are the ones who are going to have to do it.
Yeah. Hey, thanks very much, Keith, for joining us. People can check out the column up at publicaddress.net. It's the On Point column there from Keith Ing, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks very much, Keith.
Thank you.